Chat, we are now about to embark on a literary journey through one of the most incredible, incredible stories I've come across about trans people. So, buckle your seatbelts, everybody. Buckle your seatbelts, because we are about to go over an article titled "When All the Nerds Died, All the Trans People Appeared. Coincidence?" all of these people started watching. All of the nerds started watching anime. What happened to my Naruto-loving son? Why does he now have breasts? Chat, this is real. This is real. I am not making it up. Here it is. When the nerds died, all the nerds died. All the trans people appeared. Coincidence? Oh god. All right. Let's fucking go. The subheader is: an American mother mourns the loss of her nerdy teenager in the transgender tsunami. Entraba, you're dancing on the knife edge, okay? Pretty soon you're gonna be non-binary. If you're a gamer, it's only a matter of time. Okay. Here we go. Do you know why it matters whether you use a 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio or a 2.39 to 1 aspect ratio? I don't, because I refuse to learn. This is a long-running discussion in my marriage. My husband seems very insistent that the distinction between the two is critical. The more he insists, the less I care, and neither of us is backing down. My husband is the definition of a nerd. Nerds will die on the hill of aspect ratios, even if it means clearing the room. We all know a nerd. We all know when we need them, and when we want to avoid them. Holy shit. They're handy with fixing the Ethernet connection, not so much with jazzing up the conversation at a work party. Married to a nerd? You'll know. Even your sister knows the pros and cons of 1.85 to 1 and 2.39 to 1 by now. Your friends ask who's going to come to your dinner party. Subtext: please, please God, not the husband's friends. The husband I can cope with, but the husband and his friends are too much. Oh, this poor anonymous woman who's just like, I hate my husband's friends. I hate them so much. Please, please, for the love of God, don't let them come here and embarrass me in front of my normie friends. We just want to drink cocktails and talk about how Trump is bad, but there's really no better alternative than Biden. And really, we just want to get wasted and talk about Sex in the City, okay? That's all we want to do. All right. In my son's early years, I hope that I might have passed on some natural indifference toward aspect ratios. Maybe I would have... Man, this woman really hates aspect ratios? Why? Whatever. Maybe I would have an ally who cared as little as I did, or even less. But no. By the time he was a toddler, he was shaping up to be a regular clone of my husband. When the leader of the Mommy and Me class asked the kids to throw out a word for everyone else to repeat, my son didn't say bear or rabbit. He said, "The war in Afghanistan?" Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Side, mark this down as like things that never happened. Things that never happened. This is satire. I mean, it really has to be. It has to be. But I don't think it is. Oh my god. Obviously, my husband's room clearing ability was genetic. I dropped my dear child off at the elementary school and watched the other kids run away to avoid being trapped in an intensely detailed conversation about the latest thing he'd picked up on. Not to be like a bit not to be ableist here. Maybe your kid just has like low level autism, like is a bit on the autistic spectrum. Like, that's okay. It's okay to be interested in niche things. Yeah. Look, it's not just me saying that. People in chat are saying this too, okay? Like, Jesus. Yeah, kid needs to level up his autism stat. But nobody calls kids nerds these days. It's a word you hear less and less. Chat, we need to look. These are rookie numbers. We need to up the stats, okay? You're all fucking nerds. You're all here on this politics stream. You're all fucking nerds, okay? None of you is a normie by virtue of just being on Twitch in the first place, and also by watching politics Twitch, okay? In fact, nearly a decade and a half later, my now teenage son sits in classrooms full of kids who probably say nerd as much as they say square or loser. As a category, nerd seems to be disappearing. Are its members, once proudly split between the Star Trek and Star Wars clans, being absorbed into the general population? Is there a new word I just don't know? Or are they disappearing completely? Are we witnessing nerdicide? And I just need to stop. I just need to stop. This white wine drinking mom is literally asking if we're doing a genocide of nerds. Just like, oh, no. She's not a boomer, Tungsten Wastrel. This is a Gen Xer, okay? She's got a teenager right now. This is a Gen Xer, all right? Does lady get a hobby? Read a book, please. No, having a hobby would make her a nerd. You missed the first part of the article. I don't think it's only the nerds. The same thing has happened to tomboys too. Oh dear. Here's where we're starting up the ramp, okay? Before we dive down into the transphobia. Maybe I'm showing my age, but where are all the girls who dirt bike? All the teenage girls I see these days look the same. Where are the girls in oil-stained overalls talking about engine parts? And then there's lesbians. A recent Gallup poll gives us some nerdy stats on this. Okay, first of all, before we get into the stats, if you've been on Tinder or like literally any predominantly gay hookup app, I can guarantee you that you can find your overall wearing oil-stained lesbian tomboy butch woman of your dreams, okay? I feel like this poor housewife who got married to a man who's too nerdy just really needs like a good dicking down by a lesbian. This is what I'm getting out of this article so far. She's very concerned about where all the lesbians went. The number of lesbians went up all the way through the 1980s, the 1990s, the 2000s, but then it hit the downslope. When I first saw this, it really didn't make sense. We're all getting more tolerant nowadays, right? So why the shift? I know that lesbians aren't all tomboys or vice versa, but it looks like they're both heading in the same direction, south. I couldn't help thinking it's the same thing that's happening to the nerds. Paragraph break. But LGBT identification overall is going up. Way up. It's not just that there are more gay guys, it's that there are more trans people, as well as categories we didn't have until recently, like non-binary. There are even oh goodness. There are even people who say they are queer and straight, which really does make me feel old. So are these new LGBT people, even the straight queers, actually just the nerds and tomboys from back in the day? It feels like the two things at least might be linked. Okay, lady, you really need to play some D&D, okay? The Venn diagram between people who have who like play in-person tabletop Dungeons and Dragons and like the queer community is practically a circle. Um just saying, okay? To me, this fits. All these kiddos are obsessed with bodies. I love a good selfie, but these young people really take it to the max. All they think about is how they look. I hate that the young are blamed for this, as if my generation would be oh so much better in the world of Pornhub and Snapchat filters. But it's not just the vain fixation on appearance. This is a weird direction to go in. Nerds have nowhere to go. Nerds used to have transferable skills. One nerd was better at programming, the other at art. These skills were a sort of currency. Okay, look. If your definition of a nerd from back in the day was like nerds are good at like science and art, literally everyone with a hobby is a nerd. These skills were a sort of currency. Once they were free of the school's grip, men like my husband went out into the world and to nerd it up. They went from being the target of wedgies to the target of acquisition bids. The nerds in my son's generation don't seem proud of their skills because they're not visible. So, going back to my son, this kid had an obsessive craze after obsessive craze. Thomas and the Tank Engine was his universe. He knew that where that train ate, slept, and played. Him and all the other trains in the station. Trust me, I heard all about it. But then he got to know so much about Thomas that he hit peak Thomas and suddenly lost all interest. So then it was roller coasters. He knew everything about them. Where the biggest was, the tallest was, the fastest was. I could have used Thomas and his friends as doorstops, and he wouldn't have even noticed. He was an expert on roller coasters. He wrote a song about roller coasters. He was going to grow up to be a roller coaster designer. He built roller coasters. He drew roller coasters, a lot of them. We'd watch videos of roller coasters. This lasted until about the age of 8, when I'd finally got my head around roller coasters, and then suddenly Minecraft, and he was an expert in that instead. Here's the important point. Nerd is a genetic trait. Okay, here's a important counterpoint. Nerd is not a genetic trait. Stop dabbling in eugenics, okay? Because from the sound of it, your child would be the target of some pretty gnarly eugenicist arguments. All right. Anyway, my mother-in-law warned me about this on the day of my wedding. Yo, her entire family hates her husband. So it's not just her, it's her entire family who's like weirded out by her husband being like nerdy about something, you know? My mother-in-law warned me about this on the day of my wedding. Would my husband even notice that you could read the print on his t-shirt underneath his white tuxedo shirt? No, because it wasn't about aspect ratios, so we got him changed into a plain t-shirt. But then he put on a bright red watch, which he thought was just fine, because it wasn't about aspect ratios. She told me if it's not technical, he's just not interested. What? Holy shit, I feel so bad for this guy. His wife is such like a shrill shrew. Not like in the way her voice sounds, but her rhetoric is shrill and awful. Like father, like son, I learned. Just self-loathing that you reproduced. My son was all or nothing, and once he dug through every little fact to become the world's expert, he moved on to the next thing. One day, I guess he'd found his own aspect ratio. he'd find his own aspect ratio. But the next thing didn't make any sense. He suddenly decided he was trans, even though he'd never shown any sign of femininity at all. In fact, the opposite. It's not as though I thought this was exactly like roller coasters or Minecraft. He was coming into puberty and trying to make sense of his place in the world and his new feelings about girls. It was important to him. Yep, we all knew where this was going. We all knew where this was going, okay? We're at the top of the roller coaster, time to go down, okay? My son, God. But I also knew my kid, and knew that as soon as he was interested in something, he'd throw himself into it 100%. So I guess the best thing to do was to let him figure it out in his own time. Just like his father's inability to move on to the next topic, my son was suddenly unable to stop talking about transition. But it didn't make sense to me, because he wasn't thinking about what came after transition. Usually he'd know every single aspect of what something entailed from start to finish, but with his sudden obsession with transition, he wasn't willing to research what kind of body he'd have afterwards. It was such a weird gap, and it made it difficult to take the whole thing seriously. Why did he care so much about the process of transition, but not its result? Good night, Subject Delta. So, let's pause. Let's time out real quick. Let's time out. No person before transitioning knows what their body results are going to be. Okay? No one is like, well, here is a before picture, and here is what I will look like after I transition. Most people who transition, actually tend to downplay the changes that will happen. You know? Like, a lot of people who transition are like, holy shit, I thought 35 was too late for me, and now I'm super hot. And what the fuck does she really mean here? I think we're getting at what she really means here, Tungsten Wastrel, that, like, this is basically just like a fad, right? Well, no, I know I'm a be gorgeous. Exactly, Princess Fina. That's why you're called a princess. Yeah, we should have been born with the gift of prophecy. I mean, to be honest, a Peppy Toaster, being trans and having a non-supportive family is kind of like being a Cassandra, you know? You have the ability to speak the truth and prophesize, but no one listens to you. You know, no one listens or gives a fuck. You know? You're like, hey, this is probably gonna happen. Everyone's like, whatever, trans. Yeah, it's like her kid had autism and got bamboozled into being trans. All right, let's keep going here, okay? Just like his father's inability to move on to the next wait. Okay, next paragraph. I kept on coming back to this point over and over. My son seemed to be glitching. He was stuck on repeat. Normally, he'd be doing everything he could to get all the details, so no one was an expert like he was, but he didn't want to be an expert in transgenderism in the same way he wanted to be an expert in roller coasters or Minecraft. He couldn't bring himself to look at the consequences of the changes he said he wanted to make to his body. It was a blind spot. He knew all about transition, but nothing about the people who'd transitioned. And he didn't want to find out either. Wait, what is the implication about the people who transitioned? The overwhelming majority of people who transition do not regret their transition at all. The only thing that they regret is that other people treat like trans people like dog shit. Let's see. The people I've told about this seem to think he won't change his mind, but I know his mind. I know how he thinks and how his big obsessions suddenly resolve themselves away. I can't help but wonder how this connects to gaming. Just before he got obsessed with transition, he was always playing video games which gave him avatars he could customize, where he could be this or that, boy or girl. Is that what he thought he'd be doing to his body? Didn't he realize his body didn't come with a reset button? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh fuck. Fuck, man. The gaming, it transed him. If Joe Biden puts all of our kids into gaming camps, they will all become trans. It's the new feminization. They were they all played Fallout New Vegas obsessively. It's true, chat. If you put 200 hours into Fallout New Vegas, you become a trans. Um This woman, yeah, this woman is why teens don't come out as trans. Absolutely. Like, here's the thing, right? There are a lot of people who are like, kids are too stupid to make decisions for themselves. And that can be true sometimes. But, like, kids are wired to learn. And the idea that, like, you know your kid better than they know themselves is, like, a wild amount of projection on your part. Just a wild amount of projection. Yeah, I hit 1 minute over 200 hours and bam, booba. What about 3,000 hours on Skyrim? Skyrim has nothing to do with transgenderism. You can play an infinite number of hours of Skyrim, no transgender. It's only New Vegas, okay? Bethesda games don't trans you. It's only the it's only the Obsidian ones. Knights of the Old Republic, safe. Knights of the Old Republic 2, well, little bit iffy, okay? My mom had a conversation like this. I told her she was a fucking idiot and she didn't write an article. Try being normal TERFs. I know, right? Transitioning is brand specific. I started KOTOR 2. Look, it's a bit iffy if you play the original release of KOTOR 2, but if you play KOTOR 2 with the restored mod, like the mod that like restores cut content, then you're definitely transed, okay? Honestly, if you put mods on any game, there's like a 50-50 shot you're going to be transed, okay? Anyway. Everybody is different from any kind of change. I'm currently going through menopause at 43. My family doc said it was because I'm small, 4'10" and 95 pounds. Oh, you are very tiny, but that's great. Kreia cosplay when? When I'm 72. Sorry. That explains why I'm an MB. Yo, you look at the game and you're in our crosshairs. Yeah, the real shocker is when you activate VATS the first time after 200 hours in Fallout New Vegas, and it's actually just an image of you from like a satellite. And if you take the shot, it actually a small needle flies down from space and transes you. That's how it works. All right. Yeah, no, this lady published it anonymously because I think for obvious reasons she was like, this might be a little transphobic, and I don't want my husband to know how much I despise him. All right, let's keep going because we still got a ways to go through this article, guys. I didn't need to do much research into hormones to know just how powerful those little things can be. I'm in menopause right now and taking HRT, but my doctor has said I can't go beyond 5 years because of the medical risk. If I face that risk in only 5 years despite having a body which has naturally produced estrogen all my life, what happens to my son's male body in 5 years? How about 10? 30? Surely this is the kind of thing you'd care about if you care about the finer points of roller coaster design. Or, you know, maybe this is something that doctors have studied. Maybe this is something doctors have studied for trans people, and like, it's fine. Surely this is the kind of thing you'd care about if you care about the finer points of roller coaster design. It matters when roller coasters go wrong. Engineers get sued. It should matter when hormones go wrong too. It's like he can't understand his own body as a machine, which it is. God. I'm already skeptical about medication. What? Oh god. Okay, now we're in the anti-medicine arc. We're in the anti-medicine arc. My husband was once told by his doctor that his cholesterol was too high and got prescribed statins to bring it down. But my husband hated the idea of being on medication for life, so he decided to deal with it by exercise and diet. He cut down on sugar and dairy, went jogging once, and even that made enough of a difference to bring that number down. It made me wonder how much money these big corporations are raking in from medications that just aren't researched enough. No, we know that exercise and changing your diet can affect your cholesterol levels. They tell you that. But if you're not willing to make the change, then yeah, you get prescribed the medication. So he made the change. He doesn't need the medication. God. Yeah, doctors usually tell you to work out more and change your diet to be healthier. That's usually something they tell you. Fuck, man. So when I looked into all these drugs my kid wanted to take as part of his transition, I got genuinely nauseous. I already knew about Lupron because a friend of mine took a few doses of it for IVF, for in vitro fertilization. Now she has a lifelong heart problem requiring constant monitoring and medication. Apparently, 1 to 10% of people who take puberty blockers like Lepron get heart problems, but heart disease runs in our family on both sides. My son is way more likely to be in that 1 to 10%. Well, if heart disease already runs in your family, then he's probably going to get it anyway. Jesus Christ. Yeah, also big doubt, yeah. My one friend has this problem, and I'm blaming it on Lupron. I have also always fed our son hormone-free meat and dairy, so supporting the use of hormones goes against my basic health principles. She already mentioned in this article that she herself is on hormone replacement therapy. She is on HRT for her menopause. Like, yeah, it's okay for me, but not for thee. If you're trans, get fucked. My HRT is prescribed on the basis of long-term studies. The hormones my son wanted to use seem to be prescribed on the basis that they were available, so hey, why not? It would be one thing if my kid were suicidal or had always had some problem with the idea of himself as a man. I know that's a very real thing for some kids, but he seemed to think he could take estrogen just because he wanted to, and treated the whole thing like it didn't really matter that much. The nerd brain he got from his dad wasn't connecting cause with effect. I'm pretty sure most kids, unless I think most kids are aware of what HRT does. No, most kids, if not all kids, are very hesitant to talk about being trans with their parents because they know it's not going to go well. You know? Is she misgendering her daughter? Yes. Throughout the entire thing. Yes. What the fuck did I stumble into? We're just doing a reading skin slip of the article titled, "When All the Nerds Died, All the Trans People Appeared." Coincidence? And basically this is a California wine mom accusing trans people of nerdiciding all of the nerds and turning them into trans people. I think I fit right here. Hell yeah, Vamp Boy. The fuck transphobia? Well, yeah. Chat, I told you this was going to be virulently transphobic. Come on. I told you this was going to happen, okay? Let's see. Also, there are long-term studies on hormones for trans people. Those exist. I can't tell you everything about my kid because it's his healthcare and his life. But I will say this, he's so ahead in so many ways, but so behind in others. I can tell you that the way he talks about transition is nothing like the way people sometimes talk about it on the news. Yeah, because my child isn't talking about being trans like they do on the news, that must mean he's not really trans. Um, the trans people we hear about are nothing like my son. For them, the story is salvation. Transition rescues them from misery. For my son, it's like some weird loop he's stuck in, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with sexuality or even sex. Because maybe it has something to do with gender, weird lady. Maybe it's a gender thing and not a sex thing. Maybe. You've raised a relatively happy child who wants to transition because they'd be happier that way. Do you really want to make your kids suicidal before you recognize that maybe they might be trans? Is that what you want for your kid? You want to... Like, this is the weird world that these, like, wine mom TERFs live in, right? Where they're like, well, my kid isn't suicidal and wants to be trans, and so therefore they can't possibly be trans. And it's like, well, do you want to raise your kid to be suicidal before you actually believe that they're trans? Like, what do you want? Like, that seems horrific. What? You don't need to make drugs just for trans people. Like, drugs have multiple effects. Like, puberty blockers are very useful for trans kids, but they aren't used just for trans kids. The human body, guys, the human body is the same whether you're trans or cis. Like, what? You don't need to make specialized drugs. I'm not getting stun locked. I'm not getting stun locked on this. I'm not getting stun locked on this. God. Let's see. It took me a long time to piece this together, but here is my realization. If he grew up when I did, his subculture would be nerd. But nerd has gone, and so he had to find something else. That's so tough for young men. With all the porn they're exposed to, and all these beautiful people and adverts around them. I wish I could get him to see that his brains matter more than his body. I guess being trans is a way to be visible, since being a nerd isn't. Right now, we're trying to get him to understand the medical consequences and hoping he shifts his attention onto the next thing, but that will be hard. There are so few places where nerds are welcomed these days. Yeah, there are so many places where nerds are ostracized, where they're like, hey nerd, get out of here. We don't play video games in these parts. Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, Addison Gardner, our research and development into like more effective and more healthy ways of transitioning would be great. I'm just saying, like, the human body is the human body, regardless of like whether you're trans or cis. Come on now. I feel sorry for this kid and for her husband. Are we medicating the nerds away? Are we convincing them that their bodies are just like avatars they can try on or get rid of once they get bored? After all, if he goes through with this, it might not just be hormones. It might be surgery too. I genuinely don't think my son gets how permanent that is. I know it sounds crazy, but I really don't. What's wrong with just being a nerd? It was enough for Bill Gates, Charles Darwin, I don't think Charles Darwin was like sitting around going like, yes, I am a master at hoop and stick, the gamer of yesteryear. Charles Darwin was just a scientist. It's like saying Socrates was the nerd of his era, and like what the fuck does that mean? Also on this list are Steve Jobs, who is also not a nerd. See, Steve Jobs was just like a savvy businessman. And Mozart and Albert Einstein. And like Einstein was famously so much not a nerd that he flunked out of school. Yeah, these people weren't nerds. Mozart was the Chad of his day. Like, holy shit. What are you talking about? Yo, you guys think Mozart was going around playing crazy parties for, like, the aristocracy and wasn't getting laid, like, all the time? Are you kidding me? Anyway, it finishes up with... Oh, okay, wait. It finishes up. We got 2 more paragraphs. I always wanted a nerd. Nerds are smart. They earn good money. They're safe. First of all, lady, clearly if you think nerds are smart, you haven't been in enough anime sub-communities, okay? Clearly you haven't gone deep enough into the nerd subreddits, all right? Second of all, you think that all nerds earn good money? I beg to differ. My entire community begs to differ. Also, the entire article that you just wrote indicates that you absolutely did not want a nerd for, like, a husband. It seems like you despise your husband for being a nerd. like you fucking hate him. So I'm not surprised you seem to fucking hate your son or daughter, too. I don't know why I did air quotes around daughter. I meant to do it around son. Yeah, I'm not surprised you hate your son, aka your daughter. There we go. Your kid is only unsafe because you're unsupportive. Exactly, Nova. Exactly. I wish my son would stop talking about gender and start living. It makes him boring. And if I wanted to be bored, I can talk to my husband about aspect ratios. Holy shit. Holy shit. Like, at this... Yo, crazy anon author of this article, if you happen across this, if you happen across this video on YouTube, this segment, okay, and you make it this far, please pack up a bag and just fucking leave your family. Just, like, go on the road, start a new life somewhere else, because you clearly hate your husband and your kid. Like, holy shit. Imagine writing an article that you know is going to be so poorly received that you have to author it anonymously. And you just shit talk your trans daughter and your husband throughout the entire thing. And then you have the audacity to end it with, I always wanted a nerd. But then talk about how your husband is a boring piece of shit and your son won't stop talking about gender and it makes them boring. The amount of contempt and disgust that is so poorly concealed throughout this is sickening. And if your loved ones ever read this, they would never look at you the same way again. Right? Like, if your husband ever read this, he would never look at you the same way. If your trans daughter read this, I would not blame her if she cut off all contact with you as soon as she is legally able to. Like, and chat, just want to throw this out there because there's one last piece of this. Remember how I called this as a California wine mom? Well, here is the quick blurb at the very end. I am an American working professional and mother. We live on the West Coast. My son is on the autism spectrum and has become convinced that he is transgender. My belief is that much of this new identity is a rewriting of his history. The At no point in this entire article does she properly gender her daughter. At no point. Yeah, Entrama, I did not read this article beforehand. I was going in blind. I called out the autism, I called out the California wine mom, and I'm absolutely on point. I do not miss, okay? I do not miss. And frankly, best of luck to the young trans sister out there, who's coming to terms with her identity and hopefully escapes from this woman's horrific clutches before, like, she's permanently damaged. So, yeah. Even the autism misdiagnosis, I don't think it's a misdiagnosis. I think the I think there's a chance that, like, her daughter is on the autism spectrum, you know? Um, and I don't mean that in, like, a negative way at all. It's just that there's a high correlation between autism or existing on the autistic spectrum and transgender folks. But, like, that makes sense because people who are on the spectrum tend to view social constructs as being much more arbitrary than people who aren't on the spectrum, you know? It's not even like they can't, like, autistic people can't stay closeted. It's just like autistic people look at gendered social constructs and are like, that's dumb. I want to do what I want to do, you know? Um, and that's true. Dysphoria can also be mistaken for autism spectrum disorder as well. Yeah, I don't mean this to be a knock against, like, autistic or trans people. I'm just saying, like, yeah. Yeah, social constructs are bullshit. They are what we make them, right? Um, but autistic people seem to have an easier time seeing through that, you know, seeing that for what it is.